So in keeping with the theme of light, the title of my little talk today is called Light and More Light. That was Nona Brooks's favorite prayer. Short, to the point. Nona Brooks is one of the founders of Divine Science. Light and more light. Okay, raise your hand if you do not want more light in your life. Thank you, Vicki. Yeah, she's raising her hand. She does not want more light. Yeah. Well, good. That's wonderful. I said raise your hand if you don't want more light. And her hand goes, wait till I finish this sentence. Yeah, I know. You're just so excited to be here, and we're so happy to see you. We're living in a very complex and changing world, and it's changing like practically by the second. So light, insight into self, guidance, knowledge, wisdom. We can all stand to use a little bit more of that. The clearest thinkers of the race, the philosophers, actually all they want is more light. One of my favorite phrasings from Isaiah is, "Then shall thy light break forth as the morning, and thine health shall spring forth speedily." What a great thought! That our health will spring forth just like the light pops up from behind the mountain, and there's the light. Of course, it's always there. It's just on the other side of the planet for a while, and then we get to have it. One of the chief strains in life seems to be our awareness that little decisions that we may make could affect our whole life. Who cannot identify with Robert Frost as he muses, "Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference." So there's the two roads, and you can go right or you could go left. Now what we really want to see is what's at the end of the road. We want to like already know while we're standing there, well, door A, door B. I want to see what's behind it first before I make my decision. The precursors of religion actually use the word providence for the word God. And the word providence actually means to see forward. So that's really what we want. We want to be able to like get that crystal ball out and see the future. The word religion is defined as divine revelation for human guidance. This definition does not say you have to go to church to find it. And that is because it is within each one of us. Rocco Errico says that Abraham had intrinsic religion. Abraham was not a Jew. Abraham was Hebrew. You weren't Jewish until Moses came along. I always thought Abraham was a Jew, just like I thought Jesus was Catholic. What can I say? My very best friend, when I was 6 years old, thought Jesus was Presbyterian. Some of you know that funny story. I won't tell it now, but you're laughing, so that's good. So Abraham had intrinsic religion, so he talked to God. Now, in the Old Testament, of course, in the wording of it, it sounds like there's a guy up in this place called heaven with a big white beard, like talking to Abraham. But we all know what was happening internally. That was intrinsic religion. You didn't need anybody to tell you how to be spiritual. It just was, it's in there. The fact is, it's also in there with us. Abraham's not the only one. We've all got it. It's all in there. Emerson says, "There is guidance for each one of us, and by lowly listening, we shall hear the right word." Lowly listening to me means being quiet, open, and receptive. In this challenging world, finding time to be that is actually a big challenge. Now, we have this thing called divine guidance, and we have a thing called instinct. They are the same. Instinct usually happens in animals, in nature. Like we all know that the salmon know exactly when they're supposed to turn and run upstream. They know. No GPS. The birds don't have a GPS. They know exactly when to fly south and when to come back. A hummingbird knows how to build a hummingbird nest that is different than a robin nest. How is that? Google. Just Google it. That's if they forget. But they're not ever going to forget because it's in there. It can never get out of there. However, we do find ourselves saying things like, isn't nature wonderful? Isn't that just so cool that the salmon just know when to turn and run? But then when something happens to us and we get there's some showing of like an inner direction that happens, somebody says, oh, that's psychic phenomenon, that's ESP. That is a very subtle put down. For it denies the inherent flow of guidance that we have, which is the same instinct that the salmon has, the same instinct that the bird knows how to build that specific nest, because we all have that pattern within us which tells us how to do it. Our problem is that we're stepping on the hose. The water the hose is on, and we're stepping on it. And we're wondering, what is that big bulge back there? Oh, it's the water. But that's the pressure that we feel. That's that pressure because we're not letting it flow. Whether we're talking about water or we're talking about light, it doesn't matter. It's going to back up somewhere and it's going to pressurize us because we're not letting it go. Mark Twain tells a story about how he wrote an article and then he didn't have a copy, so he called the publisher. Well, actually, did they have phones back then? I don't know. And the publisher said, oh, well, we already sold all of our thousands of copies. We don't have any more. And so he worked really hard to try to find a copy. He contacted friends and all these different people. He was really determined to find it. And then finally he just said, okay, stop. And he said, well, I know there's a copy out there for me somewhere, and it's going to appear, and I'm going to find it. I don't know when or where, but I'm just not going to worry about it anymore. So he just went about his business. 2 weeks later, he's in New York City. Now, this man is from where? Missouri, right? Mark Twain lived in the Midwest. Well, here he is in New York City, standing on the corner of 5th Avenue and 42nd Street, and this guy runs up to him with an envelope and says, oh, Mr. Twain, this is amazing. I was just going to the post office to send you this envelope. It's an article I found in my study. I was cleaning out my papers, and I thought you might want to have it. Well, it was the very one. Now, we could say, oh, what a coincidence. What are the odds? Oh, that was a miracle. That was a psychic communication. I say poppycock to that. And I say that was his prepared consciousness reaping the results. He let it go. He was in the flow. He said, that article is mine. I need it. It's coming to me. Somebody's got it. And it appeared. It took 2 weeks. It might take a year. But he was willing to just let that effort, that human effort go. And so he got his article. The same thing happens with us if we will get in that flow instead of trying to make it happen. Why do we refuse to accept the fact that there is a mighty spirit in man, and the inspiration of the Almighty giveth them understanding? That is from Job. And what about this? God in the midst of me is mighty. Let's say that together. God in the midst of me is mighty. Oh, that feels so good. Just rolling right off the tongue. It just feels good to say God in the midst of me is mighty. That puts us in that place of that flow. That reminds us of who we really are. Guidance is not a special act of God that comes from without to us. It is not a phenomenon dealing with any exterior force upon man. Just as the hummingbird knowing how to build its nest does not come from Google. It's in there already. Natural guidance is divine, and divine guidance is natural. That's a phrase that comes from Butterworth. I really like that. So there's no need to reach out to what we think is God out there. The lowly listening, the being quiet, the being open and receptive gets our consciousness into that flow. So who is in the flow? Oh, you're actually raising your hands. Yay! Okay, I didn't think anybody would. Thank you, Scott. Thank you for playing. Oh, Vicky. Oh, Jan. Who else? Is that? If you're in the, oh, look at that. Lori, look at that. Becca. Oh, Velma. Oh, Marie. Oh, yes, Tom. Fabulous. I know everybody inside is raising their hand. We may not always be in the flow, but we know what it is, and we feel it when it's happening. We always feel it when it's happening because there's just something. You just know. Brahms put it like this: I always contemplate my oneness with the Creator before commencing to compose. I immediately feel vibrations that thrill my whole being. I see clearly what is obscure in my ordinary moods. Straight away, the idea flows in upon me measure by measure. The finished product is revealed. Moriarty hated Mozart. Hated him with like a passion, because every note that Mozart wrote and put on the paper never was erased or changed, ever. Everything he wrote was an original and never was fixed or changed or revised in any way. And Moriarty just was so jealous. He was another composer at the time. I mean, he just really hated him. If you want to see that whole like historical fiction story, you can watch Amadeus. Now, Mozart also, just for fun, would play the harpsichord upside down and backwards at parties. He was brilliant. Some people thought he was crazy. They thought he was insane. He never ate. He got pneumonia. He didn't take care of himself. Beethoven is said to have said that he would see an entire symphony in a flash, but it would take him 2 weeks to write it down, and it would take a 100-person orchestra an hour to play it. Now, are they geniuses? Yes, but so are you. They accessed their light and had confidence in the light. They felt it and they moved with it. I mean, we could even call Mozart just like insane or crazy person. But he didn't care about being politically correct. He felt that music flowing through him and he did it. He did not let anything stop him because he couldn't stop himself. Wouldn't it be nice to be so sure of that flow that happens with us that we are unstoppable? Jesus said, all these things that I do, you can do too. All of these things I do, you can do too. I'm hearing Annie Get Your Gun in my head. Only he's saying, I can do it, you can even do it better. And Annie Get Your Gun, she said, I can do them better than you. But Jesus is saying, you can do them better than me. You just have to get in the flow. That was what he was trying to teach us. Walter Russell, who was a writer, an artist, a scientist, and a philosopher, said, he says, the universe does not bestow favors on the few whom it seeks out as interpreters. It's just the reverse. The universe gives to those who plug in. He says, mediocrity is self-inflicted, like a self-inflicted wound, which you get really mad at yourself for doing. When you open that can and it slips and you cut your finger, you just go, oh, that's a self-inflicted. Well, that doesn't feel good. But genius is self-bestowed. What a difference. We self-bestow that genius by cultivating the silence. The universe talks to us in those flashes of inspiration. Knowledge is ours for the asking. We don't have to mesmerize over it and just worry about it. All we need to do is recollect it. And it comes, those flashes of inspiration that we need to know in that moment will always come to us because it's already here. We are already in the light. And it may not look like that. It may not appear like that, especially to people that we may not get along with. But the more we see and feel those flashes of inspiration, the better we get along. Because our lives begin to change. The Greeks had it right. The word educere in Latin actually means waking up to life. It means releasing. It doesn't mean cramming it in. We mostly think of education as notebooks full of information that we learn and that we study and that we have to get. But that was not the meaning of the word education to the Greeks. And remember, logic is not always right. Logic sometimes doesn't even feel right. Go with the hunches. Go with your gut. That's the flash of inspiration. If it doesn't seem PC or the people around you don't like it, too bad. Go with your flash of inspiration. When I think of the word flash, you know what I think of. Personal summer. You got to locate that treasure. Sometimes wisdom isn't even logical. Sometimes it just doesn't make any sense, but you no, in here you know you have to go with it. You know you have to do it. So divine guidance is the flow of infinite mind. In divine science we see there is only one mind. Everybody's got their own separate brain tissue in there, but that's not the mind. That is not the infinite mind. The infinite mind touches all of us all at the same time, and it is the only mind that we even use. But the infinite mind does not make a choice for us. It doesn't say, oh, you really shouldn't do that. You really should go over here. Oh, no. It is the urge and the energy through which you can make the choice that is best in terms of your own consciousness. Now, in traditional Christian thought, they would say that God specialized and focused on Jesus. In divine science, we would say that Jesus specialized in God. Therefore, we can all do that. It is not just Jesus. Jesus, in fact, called the inner guidance Father. Paul, later on, called that Christ. Only the Christ became worshiping Jesus the man. We do not do that in divine science. Jesus gave us such a gift by his teaching and by believing what Jesus taught, separate from the vernacular of a church structure. That's where we get the real teaching. We cannot be any more spiritual right now than we already are. You can't find it, you can't get it, you can't buy it, you can't search for it, you can't study more for it. It already exists in here. You already are it. The only job that we have is to get off the hose. Let the light shine through. Take the bushel off. Have you ever had a bushel over your head? Well, nobody can see the light in your eyes if you've got a bushel over your head, right? So let's take that bushel off. Let that light shine through our eyes. Those are the windows to the soul, it is said. The gifts have already been given. We've already got them all. Our job is to uncover them. So you might say, well, how can I distinguish between divine guidance and human will? Well, right there, the very question, asking that question puts you in a place of duality. Because you think God out there is going to do something for me. God does not do anything for you. God works through you. Because for you implies an outside force having an impact on your life, or what people call a miracle. Even a miracle is your consciousness, your prepared consciousness coming to fruition somewhere down the line, or even instantaneously. And even if it looks like an instantaneous miracle, it's not, because your consciousness got you there, and it might have taken you 5 years, and all of a sudden it looks like a miracle, but it's not. It's not actually instantaneous. It's actually been a process within your consciousness that finally came to fruition. We are powerful beyond measure. But we are afraid. Let's not be afraid. The price of freedom is vigilance, it is said. We want to be free from fear, but we want to be free to love. The law of sacrifice says that we must do something in order to get that freedom, and that's the vigilance. Vigilance means I'm going to sacrifice some of my time every day to sit and be quiet. I am going to get in the flow. I am going to focus on that inner light. And the more we practice the presence, that's why it's called practicing, the more freedom we will feel in our lives. It takes effort and persistence. If you are not willing to put any effort or any persistence into your life, then life will happen to you. You will never be able to make life happen for you. It is our responsibility, not anyone else's. So we must keep on and keep on until we catch on. Studying, praying, working towards the light. Being in groups of people who believe in that same light that is there, that we're all working on that in our languaging and what we're thinking. It's always wonderful when you've got somebody that will help you along. Like Melanie always talks about her friend who'll help her at work with gold keying, which I think is just delightful and wonderful. The cartoonists always have that little light above somebody's head and they have a little light bulb in it when they have like a bright idea. That's the light. That means that little cartoon character is in the flow. And it manifests as understanding, as guidance, and creativity. So the more creative you're feeling and the more guided you're feeling, that you're in the flow. That is the true testament to the fact that you are actually in the flow. Jesus said, let your light shine. What he was saying was, let yourself be what you really are. Do not allow your life adventures to be peppered with taradiddles and obvious fabrications. Jesus meant for us to live the authentic life. You know what a taradiddle is? Yeah, okay. Okay, Jan, $5. They said if I could use the word taradiddle in a sermon, they'd give $5. Actually, Kate said it, but she's not here, so I was supposed to work the word taradiddle into my sermon today, and Jan would give $5 and put it in the basket if I could do it. So how did that sound? And Rick is over there laughing. I did it. Taradiddle means a little lie. So do not allow your life to be peppered with taradiddles and obvious fabrications. In other words, be authentic. You don't have to lie about anything, even a little tiny white lie. Just always tell the truth. You know. So anyway, but I had to do it. We actually were together on New Year's Eve, and we were playing this game, and this word taradiddle came up, and Kate said, "I dare you to use that word in a sermon." She goes, "If you do, I'll put $5 in the basket." So she wasn't here to hear it, but you can attest to the fact that I did use the word taradiddle. We just thought it was a funny word. We thought it was a baby pterodactyl. Taradiddle is a little white lie, a little fabrication. Oh, I said it like 6 times. Okay, that's $30 you got to put in the basket. Cha-ching! There, cha-ching! There you go. They cut it off. Okay. We don't want to be here forever. So I just had to put it in there. So Meister Eckhart also, Meister Eckhart was a priest, a little Catholic priest, a little monk back in the 13th century, and they really hated him. The Catholic Church followed him all over Europe trying to catch him because he found the flow and he tried to tell everybody about it. And the Catholic Church didn't want him to say that because if you find the flow within yourself, you don't need to go to confession every Friday before Mass on Sunday. He said, let God be God in you. Catholics didn't want to hear that. The Pope didn't want to hear that. Nobody would support the church and give their money so that they could save their place in heaven. Don't even get me started. I'm a survived Catholic, that's why. Among the others of you who are also here. But it's just wonderful, though, that this little Catholic monk would feel that and sense that. It's like against all odds he found that. Because that is not what the Catholic Church was preaching at the time. When we need to make decisions, the little part that we have a problem is making the decision. I have to make a decision. Let's try to discover a decision instead. I'm going to go discover a decision today. I'm going to just say flat out, there is no such thing as a mistake. Everybody's going, what does she mean by that? There is no such thing as a mistake. You cannot ever make a wrong choice or a bad decision. Any step you take is going to lead eventually to your good. So the wrong choice that you make right now is the right choice based on where you are. And it will lead you to the next step. You are never condemned eternally by one mistake that you make, or two, or even 50. It doesn't matter. Because it always leads you, especially if you're open to moving through it and going to the next step. So this idea of not ever having made a wrong move or a mistake, it frees you from the fear of making a bad decision. Don't be afraid anymore. It's okay. It may look bad on the outside for a certain time, and you may have to live through something for a couple of months or wait until that horrible divorce is over, but it'll be over. It's not permanent. It's not the truth about you. The truth is permanent. Everything else is temporary, which means it's not the truth. If the truth about you is that you had a broken leg, your leg would always be broken. It's just a fact, but it's not the truth. So the next time you have an important decision to make, let your mind become the instrument that allows the flow rather than the thing that's got to make it happen. Sometimes when I lose things, I call divine guidance the fairies of lost articles. So if I know some things, it's in the house somewhere, I can't find it, I just go, okay, fairies of lost articles, I know it's here, come on. Let me see it, I know it's here somewhere. So I just sort of put it in an outer sort of an interesting phrasing called the fairies of lost articles. And I usually find it because I know it's there. Just kind of like Mark Twain. You just kind of got to let it go. So the light is the flow of transcendence, transcendent guidance. And if we get into a bad place and we don't know what to do and we think we have a problem, we're going to gold key it. Melanie talked about that recently. Velma and Marita have also spoken about it. It's a great little phrasing. To gold key means think about God and don't think about your problem. That's how you stay in the light. Thinking about your problem just makes everything just get darker and darker. How do you think about God? You could start Thanksgiving, right? Start with giving thanks right there. It completely changes your mind and switches your whole chemistry when you start praising. You can praise nature. Praise everything that you know about all the wonderful things that God has given us. Let the infusion of light into your mind instead of worrying about this problem that you have. You could talk about God's inherencies. You could say, well, what does God know about me? I think I know some things about God, but what does God know about me? God knows that I am powerful, that I am perfect health, that I am wealthy and opulent beyond belief, that I'm kind, that I am patient, that I'm loving. That's what God knows about me. Sometimes I forget that those things are true about me, but God always knows that about me. So if you don't remember anything I've said today, I'd like for you to remember one thing. When you get into a place that you actually have something that you need to do, and you've come up against a deadline, or you're trying to make a decision, stop yourself, snap your fingers and say, turn on the light. I can't even snap my fingers anymore. Won't even make a sound. Turn on the light. Just say that phrase into yourself. And if you've got people in your life that are also following along in the same spiritual path, tell them to remind you to turn on the light. If you're mesmerizing over something, Lori, Scott can say to you, Lori, turn on the light. And you'll go, oh, yeah, thanks. And so we need to help each other, remind each other. Tammy, if you forget the light, Velvet can say, turn on the light. Grace can say, turn on the light. Pam can say, turn on the light. And it helps us. It helps us to remember if we have people in our lives that are willing to do that for us and that we are willing to do that for others. We can certainly learn 1,000 billion trillion facts and things in our lives, but there's only one thing we actually really need to learn and know, and that is to know the knower within. And that is the infinite presence. And to sincerely and regularly acknowledge that infinite presence in everything we do. That's really all we need to know. And to go towards the transcendent idea and not just something that human logic tells us is true and right. And to know that we can be still and know and be in the flow. We will experience this infusion of light in the form of creative ideas, unerring guidance, and answers without ceasing if we're really, really willing to step off the hose and let it flow. So remember to turn on the light. All right, I want everybody to snap their fingers and say turn on the light. I can't snap my fingers, so we're going to do it all together. You might have to lick your fingers. I saw Scott. Okay, we're all ready. All right, we're going to snap our fingers and say turn on the light. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Turn on the light. Ooh, I heard some really good snappers out there. I'm going to have to get one of those little clacky things so I can snap it and say, remind myself to turn on the light.